The Old Premeds podcast is part of the MedEd Media Network at mededmedia.com. Part of that network is the Premed Years podcast, which this week hits episode 200. Go check it out. Again, mededmedia.com. This is the Old Premeds podcast, session number 40. You're a non-traditional student entering the medical field on your terms. You may have had some hiccups along the way, but now you're ready to go back, change course, and serve others as a physician. This podcast is here to help answer your questions and help educate you on your non-traditional journey to becoming a physician. Now, welcome back to the Old Premeds podcast. If this is not your first time here, if this is your first time here, welcome to the best podcast for non-traditional pre-med students like yourself, possibly. We take all of our questions from the forums over at oldpremeds.org, the largest site for non-traditional pre-med and medical students out there. Again, check it out, oldpremeds.org. This is not the typical form that you are used to, the three-letter form that everybody knows about in the pre-med world. Old Premeds is a very collaborative environment and very awesome to be part of. So go check it out. Again, oldpremeds.org. This week, we have a question about being a single parent in medical school. This poster said, I have been fighting with my fear of posting this question because I'm afraid of the answer. I'm a single dad, I work 2 jobs, and am in school full time. That's crazy. That's crazy is not in his question. That's my own dialogue in there as well. That's crazy awesome that he's doing all of that. I also have shared 50-50 custody of my son. I know that med school is a full-time job, but if I had full custody of my son, how flexible are the schools with situations like that? Are there any resources for that kind of situation? Any personal stories? All right, so let's talk about this for a little bit. During medical school, there were a lot of students who had children. A lot of non-traditional medical students had children. Everybody that I could remember had a spouse at home as well. A couple of the students were females, a couple of them were males. There was a good mix. But as far as I remember, all of them had significant others in their lives. That's not to say that if you are a single parent, that medical school is impossible. But here are some things that you have to think about. Yes, medical school is a full-time job. There's no doubt about it. It's more than a full-time job, especially when you start your clinical years. Once you hit your clinical years, you're going to be working many, many, many hours. And you are going to have to rely on other people for care of your son or your daughter, for anybody else in this situation. But in this particular poster, it's his son. When you are working with the medical schools, most medical schools are not going to have resources for single parents. Their job is to educate students to become physicians, not to be a daycare for children of their students. That's not to say that there aren't schools out there that may have some childcare services for their students, but that's not going to be the norm. One of the biggest things to keep in mind for anybody with a family as they're going through this, if you are the breadwinner for the family, and you go to medical school, your ability to take loans from the federal government to pay for medical school is capped at what the budget is set by that school. And that budget doesn't usually include any sort of extra food for family members, extra clothing for family members, extra transportation for family members, and it definitely is not going to include childcare for your family members. So if you're a medical student and you have custody of your child and you're going to have to pay for childcare, that money has to come from somewhere, and it's not going to be built into your loans. So either you have family members that are helping you either take care of your child or pay for the child care for your child, or I don't know if there's an or. There was an or in there somewhere. Or you figure something else out. Private loans are definitely not the best option for you to pay for it. Usually the best situation for this is to have family members nearby to help shoulder the burden. We always say it takes a village to raise a child, and in this situation, it definitely does. I know this poster delayed posting this question because he was afraid of the answer. But the answer is, if this is what you want to do, then you'll figure out a way to do it. Yes, it's going to be stressful at times. Yes, your son will grow up for a couple of years without a ton of interaction from you, but you can go back and listen to a lot of the pre-med years podcasts where we talk to moms going through this process. It was mostly moms we talked to that were in medical school, and they figured out a way to make it work. And so take a listen to those, and good luck to you on your journey. If you have a question that you would like answered here on this podcast, go to oldpremeds.org, sign up for an account in the forums if you don't already have one, and leave a question there. The community there will hopefully definitely jump in and help answer your question if it's something they can help with, and we will jump on it here if it's a topic that we want to cover as well. So check it out, again, oldpremeds.org. And I highly recommend you go check out the pre-med years. I talked about it at the opening. The pre-med years this week, as we're releasing this episode, the pre-med years hit 200 episodes. It's been out for almost 4 years, has basically 1 million downloads, which is awesome. We'll cross that number soon. I think if I added up all of the different places that I could look at download numbers, we're over 1 million, but I use one specific number that I look at that hasn't crossed 1 million yet, but we're getting there, which is awesome. And I appreciate all of you taking a listen here, taking a listen there, and taking a listen to our new MCAT podcast as well, which you can listen to at themcatpodcast.com. All right. I hope you have a great week ahead of you. Keep pushing forward. If this is your dream, make it come true. And we'll see you next week here at the Old Pre-Meds Podcast and the Medical School headquarters.